Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be painting up the Tormentors of the Emperor's Children. So I assemble up to the point that they would get in the way of painting. Body fully assembled, guns with their arms fully attached, shoulder pads separate, backpack separate. The head I did build off separate, but I decided in the end to glue the head back on after the fact. And then I prime them all with a gray car primer essentially. It's not the greatest, but it works very well for my purposes, and any issues with it can easily be taken care of. You just gotta be careful not to touch the stuff after you prime it. So for these Space Marines, or Chaos Space Marines, speed painting is the name of the game, because I can't wrap my head around the round stuff with a brush, so we're gonna go heavily with airbrushing. So first with Pink Horror, Emperor's Children, and Fulgrim Pink. What we're going to do is we are going to paint heavily. We're going to basically apply a bunch of bright colors, then apply oils to darken them and add all the depth and shadow. So first, Pink Horror on all the pink, then with a airbrush from an upper raised areas, Emperor's Children, covering like 60% of everything, and then Fulgrim Pink on the most raised, pointed, or flat areas. Now for planning the painting parts, since half the model is black, half the armor of the model is pink, what we're going to do for these guys is I'm going to divide them into halves. Half of their legs will be pink, half of their upper bodies and head will be black, half of their shoulder pads and backpacks will be black or pink, and then I'll just alternate them. So you'll find guys with pink legs, pink arms, pink backpack, but black chest, and then the inverse. And so that's how I'm going to plan out these guys specifically. And now with Corvus Black, Eshin Gray, and Dawnstone, we're going to apply the black. So we're going to paint on the first layer of black, Corvus Black, until we got a solid black color everywhere we need. Then we're going to take Eshin Gray and airbrush about 50 to 60% of the black that's already done. And then we're going to do highlights or bright spots on the flat areas, the more raised areas like the heads or stuff, or the flat obvious planes on the legs and stuff like that. And I'm not going to bother masking it. I'm just going to carefully grab them and wrap them around with my fingers, and my own skin and flesh will be the mask. And yeah, and it worked very well. Just gotta make sure to clean my hand between each model. Now, normally I never do airbrushing to this extent, and partially it's because my old airbrush or air compressor is so poor that it can only work for 10 minutes before it needs to take the rest of the night off. So I jury-rigged a bunch of water bags next to it to keep it cool long enough to do this, and by then the water in the bags was boiling hot, just to do these 10 dudes. And now with Dawnstone, we're going to apply this into the gaps of the armor, like the stomach, the folds in between that black thing. I wanted to go with bright colors first. I chose a little bit too bright. I took Dawnstone. I should have taken Eshin Gray. It would have been a better fit. But this works. Now trying something very new without varnishing and doing it in this early of the stage of painting. Metal, more specifically Vallejo Duraluminum. I'm going to apply this on all the trim, and I want you to know there is a ton of trim, and this took like 1.5 afternoons to do all this. Alright, with full bright copper, we're going to apply this on all the gold-like things, brass things, or whichever. The shoulder pads, the Emperor's Children symbol, and random things here and there, gold coins, gold chains, such and such. Alright, Bugman's Glow. We're going to use this to apply it for all the flayed skin that's on the armor. That's pretty much it. Then we're going to go with Night Questor Flesh for all the leather belts and leather pouch. And probably should have skipped this step for recording it, but Snarsnik Green for the grenades. And then, I'm not pronouncing that, Lilac for the, some of them have these bottles, and I'm just applying this. And then finally, gloss varnish around 2 coats with a little bit of water because it has a yellowing effect slightly in order to prepare the models for oil paint to flow well. Alright, with magenta, black, and Gamasol. Gamasol is just mineral spirits. I'm just using mineral spirits. Gamasol is just a brand. Odorless, I believe. So essentially, I'm going to take purple, mix in black to make it very dark. Now the first thing I do is I actually add a little bit too much of the mineral spirits to thin it down. It becomes a pretty thin wash, and I apply it all over. And then I wait around 1 hour or so, 50 minutes or so, whichever, an hour, and then I just start getting pure mineral spirits and a whatever it is, Q-tip, and I remove it. Now how I remove some of this is mostly by tapping on the model, and it softens the paint that's dried on there and allows me to move it away and remove it. Instead of just wiping things away, I tap it to loosen it away, and then it kind of falls away. And then once that was done, I waited for the next day for it all to dry, and then I found that it wasn't good enough because in the metals, in the metal areas, it was too thin to really partake and really get in there. So what I did was I did a second layer of oil paint, but far thicker, basically less mineral spirits and more paint. And then I applied this went from a wash to more of a sludge on all the silver parts. And then I waited an hour, and once that dried, I then did the removing process again by just tapping with a Q-tip that had mineral spirits in it to loosen the stuff and allowed me to remove the things well. And yeah, it worked pretty well. And now to re-highlight everything. Since these are troops, they're only really I'm only doing basically like 2 coats of paint, base and highlight, essentially, theoretically. So we're basically redoing the highlights for everything. So 1.5 afternoons of work, basically. So we're doing all the edges on all the sharp edges. When it comes to the flat planes like the bolters, apart from doing the edges, what I do is I just do a bunch of taps or swirly lines in it, and it creates this nice look and color, like reflectiveness to it, to contract with where the oil paint and mineral spirits, where it dulls it, like gives it sort of a matte color over it. And so this helps make the bolters look more lively, just the flat metal look lively. And yeah, I basically do all this, and this takes less time than the first time I applied it, but it's still a long time. And with full dried copper, I re-highlight all the full dried copper. Simple, easy, done. And with Sycorax Bronze, I'm going to use this to highlight further the silver gold stuff. I just did this just because it took only a few seconds. This is kind of a gel-like paint. Did it on the edges and tips of the Emperor's Children stuff, the other symbols and such. This took almost no time. Now with Emperor's Children, Fulgrim Pink, I essentially, we're not going to do any edge highlighting or stuff like that because these are troops. They don't get all the bells and whistles, but we're going to do some glazes. So there's some places where the oil paints I missed and just kind of ruined the color, or just like stayed there and I just missed it to remove it. So Emperor's Children first, go through all the models and find places where in the dark areas where just to fix the color there, essentially cover over mistakes. And Fulgrim Pink, we basically do the same thing on the more raised bright areas just to fix mistakes from the oil painting that we missed, and also to trim up some details and brighten some areas. That's it. And with Night Quest or Flesh, back over all the leather on all, or basically edge highlighting and the belts, and filling in and edge highlighting the pouches. Now I could go lighter, I could add something brighter into this to do a further highlight, but once again, these are basic troops, and I'm going to spend a lot of time on them, but they're just troops. And with Bugman's Glow, again, we're going to be painting the flayed skin, we're going to be re-highlighting it, focusing on the most raised areas, flat planes and edges and stuff, and just solidifying the color. That's it. And now with Cabalite Green and Snarsnick Green, we're going to paint the eyes. They'll be green. So Cabalite into the eyes, and then Snarsnick Green basically highlighting or the center of the eyes. You just need a fine tip brush, that's all. Now with Cabalite Green and Cybrite Green, we're going to be painting the tassels. Basically Cabalite Green all over on all the tassels. They have tons of them, some of them on backpacks, some on the back of their legs and stuff like that. And then once that's done, we're going to highlight with Cybrite Green, where we're basically just going to paint lines on there. It has its own lines, but sometimes it can't really follow them because they're too tiny. So with a fine tip brush, I just make my own. Now you could go further and mix some Pallid Witch Flesh with the Cybrite Green and do a third layer, but once again, these are troops. I'm limiting how much detail I put into them. Now for the bases. I want to do a marbling effect, but they're too rough for that. So what I'm going to do is take some fine sandpaper and I'm just going to sand them down until the top of the base is smooth, or pretty smooth. And now with Corvus Black, Dawnstone, Administrative Grey, Cabalite Green, Phoenician Purple, Fulgurite Copper, the bases, and a very dry baby white, Kirkland, we're going to do the bases. I already applied Corvus Black on literally everything, so don't forget there's 4 bodies that have like rocks underneath, so the Corvus Black, and then I paint Dawnstone on them, a little bit loose and watery so it's a bit transparent, and then eventually I'll go back and highlight them with Administrative Grey later. But as for the bases, I'm going to take Dawnstone, I'm just going to slop it randomly a bit here and there. What I'm going to end up doing is creating a much darker marble. I should have started with the Dawnstone as a base and then added Corvus Black after the fact, but it's fine. I'm going to use it to denote this unit. So basically the different units in the Emperor's Children, their marble bases are going to literally have a different patina. And so once that is done, we will take our baby wipe, which we stretch out heavily until it creates this thin spider-like fiber, apply it all over, and then we start airbrushing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with green. I'm going to airbrush green. It takes a few coats because I have to get the consistency right, and the baby wipe will essentially stop some of the stuff from getting in. Once that is done, I'm going to switch over to purple and do that selectively here and there. And then once that's done, I'm actually going to take the baby wipe off, flip it over to get a different patina, and then apply administrative gray on it to add that whitening effect there. And you can do these in any order you like. It depends on what color effect you want. Whatever's first is going to be the most diminished. Whatever's last is going to be the biggest. And then when you remove everything off, you have to put these things under the sink and rub them with your fingers to remove like traces of the baby wipe that's stuck on there. Once we're done with the airbrushing portion, we basically got an amalgamation of like clouds, essentially, of random strengths and densities here and there. So what we then do is we go back with the paints. I start off with Dawnstone, and I paint hard lines along where it like seems to float or dissolve into the black, because I want to and stuff. And I ended up painting like a ferret or something on one of them, just randomly happened. And essentially, I add extra color to... So essentially what I'm doing is I'm reapplying stronger color into the colors that I airbrush, because when I airbrush, the color seems to become more matte or more diluted. So what I do is I basically add more Dawnstone into the Dawnstone, more administrative gray into the administrative gray, more green into the green, more purple into the purple. I didn't bother with the black. Essentially what I do is I follow what looks like to be natural made lines or patterns with the airbrushing, and then I fill in and do little nicks here and there. This is a very artistic thingy. We're basically trying to give form to these clouds of color we made. And then once that is done, we will apply 2 layers of gloss varnish. I didn't mention it before. We're taking gloss varnish, watered down slightly because it has a yellowing effect. Apply 2 coats, and once the first one's dry, apply second one. Once that's dry, then once that's completely dry, we then take full dry copper. And what we're going to do is we're going to do little nicks here and there to like gold specks. What we're also going to do is draw some thin lines here and there that follow the patina or flow of marble that we've created. This is just a bunch of artsy stuff. Do whatever you want. Now, this is something I have only done for Emperor's Children and no other army ever. Organize which weapons, models, shoulder pads, whatever, goes to which body. I have to lay them all out, and then I find the shoulder pads that should go with it because they're color mismatching and stuff. I basically have to pre-organize it to make sure I don't screw up. And in the end, I found out that the Melt-A-Gun guy, his arms should be black instead of pink, because I somehow didn't counteract that with the sergeant, essentially, that's going to have the whip and stuff. So, mistake on my part there, but overall, the colors are matched pretty well. And so with final assembly, what I do is first I attach the backpack on, then I glue the arms on, and I move on to another model, let the arms stick on for a while, and then I go back and apply the shoulder pads when everything else is done. And then I will glue them onto their bases. And done. These models look... they're okay. So I'm a bit irritated. These guys, essentially, they took me 3 weeks to do, but not really. The video and stuff should have been done a week ago, but real life came in on the days where I could work on them the most, and I had to give up 3 full work days, essentially. So they should have come out last week. But now, they look pretty good under the light. Without a bright light on them, they look a little bit dull, but that's like every model. So essentially, the oil paints really brings out the brightness by allowing things to appear much brighter. A white thing next to black thing makes a white thing look whiter. basically like that, contrasting colors. The oil paints and the airbrushes and stuff really came in clutch for me because I just can't seem to really wrap my head around these round things to give good blends and stuff. So airbrushing did incredibly well. These guys did take a long time though in brushwork because their trim and stuff is ridiculous. The two different colors, the black and the pink, is ridiculous. When I'm building my Emperor's Children army, it's going to be like the half demon army because it is so annoying to paint these guys. It would be so much less headache to have the Slaneshi demon detachment because that's going to be so much easier and faster to paint. These guys took a while, but they look great. The dark shadows, and like basically the paint painted itself, and it worked really well on the Space Marine bodies essentially. I know Chaos Space Marine, but the Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines fundamentally, from an artistic point of view, are the same and how you work them. Their trim, their filigree, their round armor sections and stuff. So they look great. Their colors really pop. The airbrush came in clutch with my poor jury rig set up to have it to work longer than it should. But I held myself back. There's a lot of things. So if you were to do this and you wanted to bring it further, there are a lot of things you could do to go further. Highlight all the edges of the black and the pink. I didn't want to. More time, it just didn't need to. Other things as well, I could go further on the brightness of the green. I could have added a pallid witch flesh to that and increased that. Yeah, like lots of small things here and there I could have done to elevate further, but these are troops. These aren't elites. Yeah, they look pretty good. Oh, the leather I could have basically added more pallid witch flesh to bring it up to make a bigger highlight, but I think they're fine as they are. A few things I didn't show. I didn't show me doing the glow of their plasma weapons. I didn't bother because I'm not fully sure on that, so I'm still trying to figure that out on my own. And also I was just tired of recording. I work faster when I'm not recording. And so there's some things I skip because I just need this done. I just need this done now. But yeah, so overall as a unit they came out very good. So I'm gonna say they're like a 9 out of 10, but as a troops. A troop 9 out of 10 is different than like a centerpiece or a character 9 out of 10. For troops, for scrubs, these guys are going to die probably in the first turn, maybe second. They're a 9 out of 10. They look really good. Yeah. So like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share, comment if you want to comment, and save my channel from death after this pitiful month. Anyway, more to come soon. Well, I've always been on that work train, but the poor Blood Knight video did not come out. But anyway, see you later. Bye.